There was a time back in 2013 where I thought about taking my car and just smashing it.
Hello, you beautiful people, and thanks for tuning in. Today, we're speaking with Sara Schulting Kranz. Sara is a keynote speaker, extreme adventurer, best-selling author, artist, sought-after retreat organizer, and mom of 3 wonderful men. Sara began her thought leadership in making bold moves when she hit rock bottom, facing complex PTSD and trauma. Sara quickly found that change is constant, but few really know how to bravely navigate and lean into the gifts that come with that change. Sara's trauma became her purpose to help others embrace their bold life. Let's uncover what's behind the armor with Sara. Challenges in life are constant, and my guest today knows how to bravely navigate challenges in such a way that you can lean into the gifts of adversity. Sara, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited about this.
So am I. So you have this amazing framework. You lead these incredible retreats, and we're going to dive all into it.
Yeah.
And you're a best-selling author of Walk Through This. But before we walk through that, and before we talk about making some bold moves, I think for our listeners, it's important to understand what was the 1.0 Sara, what was going on behind the armor in your life that ultimately led to this framework.
Wow. Well, that's like a big question in and of itself, Judd. So thank you for that. So this is 5.0 Sara today. That's what I like to say. 'Cause
I
that's 15.
love that.
Isn't it great?
I love that.
There's no,
I'm counting my
1.0.
visions too. I'm counting my
1.0 takes
visions.
me back to 10.
So let me help that. Let me help narrow that down. Let's talk first about home life and where your situation was in your teenage years. Can we start there? Is that a good place? So let's start. We're 14, 15, and 16-ish. We are probably in survival mode, not feeling maybe heard, seen, or valued. Tell me in your words, what was that like, that period of your time?
So I grew up, and where we grow up obviously determines a lot in life, right? Like where our foundation actually lies. I always talk about the foundation of who you are. I love the foundation of who I am. I grew up in a very small farming community of back then 1,100 people. I graduated from a high school of 50 something people. This is still a continual argument on how many people were really in our class, believe it or not. Very small high school in the middle of a cornfield. So that tells you right away, like, let's set the tone of where it came from, right? Where I came from. I loved where I grew up. Very small town values. I was 16 years old. I'm kind of like diving into my family life really quick. Grew up in a wonderful family, very connected, really, really tight, close knit. We still are today. 2 brothers older than me, and then my parents. My dad and mom worked ferociously for us to really have a good family life. When I was 16 years old, I went through a very devastating experience. I was actually raped by somebody that I knew in my small town. It devastated everyone, from the family to the town itself. You could say there was big divisiveness. This was back in the time when nobody really talked about stuff like that. I ended up getting pregnant, and that threw everything into a complete tailspin, because, then there was the whole, did it really happen? Did it not? Who do you believe? I went to the police and tried to press charges. I couldn't press charges because there was no proof or evidence, as they say. And I ended up having to get a restraining order on the guy. And I will tell you, Judd, like, I know that this story sounds really, I don't even know what the term is anymore. Like, harrowing, a huge like the event that would just like be catastrophic.
Yeah.
For me, though, what it did is that it taught me who I was going to become down the road. And how it did that was I was an avid artist back then. I remember my art teacher giving me the keys to the classroom and saying, you know what, you go do what you got to do. Use your creativeness, dive into your art, do what you got to do to heal yourself, to do whatever it is to work through what's happening. What that time in my life taught me was that the most important person for you to believe in, for you to step into, for you to be, is that person of who you are. At 16 years old, understand. Now, I decided to keep my child. I decided to go to college. I have an incredible family that supported me. I went to the W-Madison. I became an art teacher. I did the whole 5-year plans on 4 years. And I remember driving down the road. I was also working. Like, I was supporting my son at the time too. So we're talking like late night reading, and then also going from there to study, to then go to school. My life was almost like robotic at that point, just to survive and thrive, because I wanted something better. And what I remember driving down the road, and I was coming home from the university, and it was one of the back roads. I could tell you exactly where it was. And I had this hit, call it like a God wink or a message from above, universe, whatever you want to call it. And I heard in my head, I was really struggling at that time. Like, how am I going to get through this? I'm exhausted. Nobody's, like, people don't believe me, blah, blah, blah. And I remember hearing in my head, this isn't all for nothing. You're going to write a book someday. People are going to hear you. Those that don't believe you right now, it doesn't matter, because they will at some point. And I think that it was, for me, the biggest lesson in not judging others, understanding that we all have a story that we are walking with every day, and really seeing people for the human that they are and holding space for that, right? Like, that was the most important thing for me. And then fast forward,
before you fast forward, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Ask anything.
I knew that there was this dark night for you as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I was unaware to the element of which you're talking. And so quite the opposite, where many of my guests have this moment of loneliness, disconnection, trauma that leads up to this event. And what I find interesting about your story in terms of your ability to navigate that was that you actually had a really solid upbringing.
Yeah.
You were seen, you were heard, you felt incredibly valued in your community, school, and home life.
Absolutely.
And then to be rocked by this rape.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start in moving from the darkest moments of your life into the light? And I ask you because I remember a moment when I left. I was jailed for I should not have been. And after 24 hours or whatever it was, when I came out, I was more lonely and disconnected, shunned and shamed. And I crawled into the corner of my garage. I was surrounded by, whatever, luxury cars and this big house. And all I could do was turn into a fetal position and cry that uncontrollable, shaking kind of cry.
Mm-hmm.
And I called for help. I don't know how I got out of that moment. I don't know, but it was the difference between us having this conversation and not.
Right.
How do you, Sarah, How do you move from the fetal position off the ground, off the floor of your garage when you are rocked in that unfair and inhumane, unjust way? Where do you find that inner strength?
So I've sat with that question many, many times because I have had to do exactly that. And what I have found might sound a little unorthodox, I should say. I truly believe through my own experiences that I have lived through, which has been, that's just like the tip of the iceberg, that we as humans carry the strength of the generations before us.
Yes.
We also carry their patterns, you see? Yeah. So, for example, let's get kind of like dive into this for a moment because this is in my book too. When my mom was pregnant with me, okay, before she was even pregnant with me, when my grandmother was pregnant with my mother, I also was having those genetic predispositions while she was in my grandmother's womb, right? So in other words, even back then, I was genetically being created for who I was going to become. My mom has since passed. My mom and I had, and still have from above, a very deep connection. So when I was going through all of that, and I remember lying on the bathroom, it's always the bathroom and the closet. It's never the garage. We all have our place, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's always the bathroom corner or the closet, just how it is.
Yeah.
And I have had that wailing, uncontrollable, like, how am I ever going to survive through this? Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
What I've always drawn on when I don't have my strength to draw on is the strength of those people who have gone before me. And that's where I've sat with that many times of what got me back up again. What was it? And I think that through the power of drawing on the strength of those who have been before us, we are also allowing us to step into our own empowerment today to break the patterns that they couldn't break. Make sense?
So, does it make sense? I went to an ancestral plant medicine retreat. And I, too, for the first time, learned that your grandparents carried you. They carried you because your grandmother, who was carrying your mother, already fully developed all her eggs, which was you, before she was born. And I thought for a moment the opposite, and I want you to help me understand it because I want to continue healing.
Yeah.
I had thought that generationally, this trauma that was being handed down from my great-grandfather to my grandfather, my father, who's handing the baton to, here you go, I'm handing off the trauma to you. And I was living literally my father's life again. I thought it was that they weren't strong enough to do the work necessary to break the trauma, as opposed to your view, which is so compassionate and even more forgiving, that think about how strong they were to even get through, to get to the point in our history of lineage to even be born today.
Yep. Can I take it a step further?
Yes, please.
May I take it a step further?
Healing, please. It's so healing. It's so forgiving.
The thing that I think that people fail to see is that, I'm just going to use addiction as the piece here. Okay. Trauma bond is an incredibly powerful thing. And addiction, there's strength in that. People look at it like, for me, I look at it like anybody that has had to walk through extremely hard times, like addicts, for example. You are some strong mofos. Okay. You guys, there is so much strength in that. And where we fail to see it is that by releasing that, what the flip of it is, by releasing the addiction or being able to heal from all of that, you're only getting stronger, right? And so we look at humans that have addictions or that they've gone through things as being, oh my God, they're like, why can't they get through this? Where is their strength to power through? And I look at people that are able to actually survive during those times. That alone is strength. Makes sense? And so I look at, for example, my own mom. There was so much strength in what she was walking through in her life, me now understanding what she was actually going through. There was a piece to it, though, where she couldn't unravel from it. And so now I'm able to do that in the work that I do today on behalf of not only myself, but on behalf of my mom, on behalf of my grandmother, my great grandmother, and all of those people that have gone before me.
Thank you for that further explanation. It's so much more forgiving and compassionate than even the way I was looking at it. And now you have this wonderful man in your life.
Yeah.
And you now meet who would be the next big instrumental male figure in your life, your husband at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I met this man who became my best friend. We were literally inseparable. And we ended up getting married, met him in college, got married, and ended up having this wonderful life together. He was, again, like my best friend. I mean, I don't even know how else to say it. People ask me, they said, what was your relationship like? And I said, I was married literally to my best friend. We laughed a lot. We had fun together. I graduated from college. We ended up moving from Wisconsin down to Missouri, back to Wisconsin, out to California. I was supporting him in his dreams and in his work. While I also, because I was a teacher, but then I had to give up my life, my teaching career to support him, which I was totally fine with doing. I ended up being a stay-at-home mom. We had a total of 3 boys, and we lived the life that many people aspire to live, right? Just all of it. Back in 2013, I found out over the course of a night that he had been leading a double life. It was Thanksgiving Eve, 2013, when he came home from what he was doing, and he was high on drugs. I had no idea what was going down, what had happened or what was happening in his life. And then all of a sudden, over the course of the night, I found out, over the course of the next few days, I found out that here he had been literally leading a double life with men. For 14 of 17 years of our marriage, he had had affairs. There were drugs involved. There was alcoholism. There was sex addiction. There was all sorts of stuff. And people often ask me, well, how did you not know that this was going on? What I always say is people will do anything to hide their secrets. And that's what was happening with me. What I didn't realize during the course of all of this was how that hit, that voice that I heard in my head back when I was 17 years old at that point, when I was in college. I oftentimes throughout from 17 to the age of 40 wondered, why can I not live my life on more purpose? There's something more here for me and I can't figure out what it is. What I didn't realize is that what happened to me at 17, that was only the first big trauma that I was going to live through. That was actually the foundation. Coming out of that was the foundation, and how then at the age of 40, I was going to end up coming out of this huge, tragic, traumatic experience that I had lived through. What's weird though, Judd, is that like now I'm 50, right? Like 10 years have passed. I talk about that, and that Sarah 4.0, she was the most brave, amazing, incredible human being. And
Mm,
I honor her so much because
mm,
now at the age of 50, even when I'm talking about it, I'm like, yeah, I went through that. And I know that to a lot of people, when I talk about it, like, that was one period of my life, right? And where I'm at today, it's just night and day. It's
mm,
night and day. And so when people ask about like, what was it like to be Sarah 3.0, 4.0, 5, what was it like? I honor every single difficult experience that I have lived through because it has been the greatest classroom for me in order to become who I am today.
mm.
The best analogy that I can give you is if you didn't hear the garbage truck just go by, the garbage truck just went by, and I always talk about, look, you got to take the garbage to the curb, but you're not going to chase after the garbage, right? Let the garbage truck do its thing, take it out where it needs to be, walk through the darkness and find your light in all of it because there is so much goodness on the other side.
Ah, wow.
I know it's a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability, your honesty, your perspective and experience in the sense that you can pay it forward and, help so many others through the strength of your story, which is where I draw a lot of strength for myself to do the same. Um, and I was talking to a co-friend, Britt Frank, from
Oh
our
yeah, I love her. She's so
community,
great.
and she talks about her parts, right, in this
Hmm.
really beautiful way. And I wanted to point that out to you because just earlier I had mentioned that I think I have like a 40 something year old inner child, right? I have so many inner child. I have my 11-year-old inner child, I have my 21-year-old inner child, and it's so beautiful to hear you talk about your versions as if they're still parts that have built this version of your new current operating system. And
Yes.
I hadn't heard of it that way. And I just love it. So beautiful to say, my 4.0, I honor my 4.0 for her strength. And my 2.0, I it wasn't there for her the way I could be there for her now. And it's just so beautiful for you to do that. Thank you so much.
Ah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, this I need to know. There are two men in your life. The first who have fathered children with you.
Hmm.
And both of those men have played roles of masculinity, toxic masculinity, non
Hmm.
toxic men. You are the mom of three wonderful men, as you always proudly tell everybody.
Yes, they're amazing.
I've been around 400 introductions of Sarah to people and community members that I know, and everything is like I'm the wonderful, I'm the mom of three wonderful men.
Yeah.
And so, how do you help mirror? How do you help show these three wonderful men what it's like to be a man in today's world, a man that we want, that you would want your sons to be?
Are you now you're gonna make me cry, Judd. Ah. So people ask me all the time, why do you do what you do?
Mm,
And there was a time back in 2013 where I thought about taking my car and just smashing it on the 405. Like, I can just end this. I'm done. And it was those three that kept me going.
mm,
That was it. It was those three. And I'm going to offer a little bit of advice to any parent, which is pretty much all parents. where you are going through a struggle at some point in your life. Because I think that we have put parents on pedestals. Like, I know in my younger years, right? Like, I looked at my parents like they could never do anything wrong. What I didn't realize was that they had their own struggles that they were going through. Now I realize that as a parent myself. When we went through everything as a family back in 2013, there were a few people that I went directly to. The coaches, the teachers, and I found somebody for them to talk to. Because I knew that I couldn't be that person, every person for them, while I was also trying to take care of myself. I didn't have my family here. I live out in California. My family's back in Wisconsin. I didn't have people to turn to or to lean on because nobody even knew what was going on. When we talk about I was literally alone on an island, I was alone on an island that no one even knew about and no one had explored. And I found myself there feeling as lost as any person could feel, as devastated as any person could feel. Because the levels of betrayal were so complex that people knew it. People knew what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. All those years, I found out people knew. Our friends knew. Different people knew. I knew nothing. And so when I stand on stage and I deliver my message of resilience and leadership and, fostering those positive cultures and problem solving, I promise you, I came from the depth of hell to get to where I am. The thing is, though, is that you can't do that alone. You have to be able to have the community. And so I needed to create that community for my kids so that I could also form that community for myself. And I'll tell you, I am that proud mom where my kids are the most important thing to me. They're 32, 22, and 17. My oldest is doing amazing. I'm so proud of him. My middle one is, talk about a brag moment, a few brag moments of my kids, but my middle one is captain of the USC men's water polo team, second year in a row. He's graduating this week. And my youngest is an incredible basketball player who just wants to play in college. And where I often tell them is, if I'm not modeling for you what it is to aspire and to reach for your goals and your dreams, then who the hell am I? And when it comes to the masculinity and femininity part, I will tell you that that's been my biggest struggle, because I have had to lift areas of my masculinity for them that I wouldn't have otherwise have had to. And I grieve that because I couldn't be the mom that I wanted to be at all times because I also had to play two parts.
Right.
And that sucked. And it still is a part of my life where I talk to my boys about that, where I'm like, I didn't get to be the mom that I was pre 40 years old. And I feel for them. And at the same time, they got to see parts of me that they wouldn't have otherwise. And where I will also take this a step further is, people oftentimes thank their hard times for who they have become. Stop doing that. You got to thank yourself for getting through those hard times. That's empowering yourself through that experience, right? I wouldn't wish what I walked through on any person in this world. I wouldn't. I would, however, wish for every person in this world to find the strength to get through those hard times that they will eventually, if not today, that they will be having to go through. Because we all do. We all go through hard times. I hope people's hard times are not as bad as my hard times, because my hard times have been really, really bad. And so, I think it's all modeling, right? Like finding those people that can strengthen and be there for your kids. And I also, Judd, I also told my boys the reason that they are so good at what they do is because we look at therapy as a very linear way, right? in a very linear way. And for me, I looked at my kids and I said, okay, I know what your gifts are, and that's going to be your therapy. My middle son, his gift was water polo. So that's why I went to the school and went to his coach and said, please let the pool be his therapy. Mm-hmm. My basketball kid, let the court be his therapy. Mm-hmm. Teach him through that so that he can also evolve better into the gift and use it as the therapy that it can become.
I wanted to thank you for, your vulnerability and honesty and your story of being able to share it with me, and have that space with me. I just wanted to honor that.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to share that I had heard a story from a woman who had shared with me that in her dark moment, she had her kids in the car and she was going to drive, off a bridge, because if she wasn't around, then, who could take care of these kids, and nobody would take care of all the kids. And on that moment, one of the kids like made a noise or something and like just snapped. She described it like snapped her out of it. And it scared her so long that she wouldn't drive for a while because she was scared of that happening again. And to share that, and I think that the gift that does come from that, to your point, is it conditions you to know that you can get through those really, really difficult moments.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I think you know our friend Rebecca Heiss.
Yes.
Her and I are working on something, actually. I'll share with you and our listeners. Working on what is the modern night in terms of the men and women to show up today, in which we're tackling this masculinity, toxic masculinity subject, and helping young men particularly understand how to show up and really empowered in your identity and owning that authentically and thriving as a result of it. And so what you have reminded me is that at its core, authentic human connection, your boys connected to parts of the community that can lift up and help, are what gets us through or navigates those most difficult times.
Yeah.
Your family did it for you. And now the community can help you with your sons into that point for all of us. And I have to also say that listening to you reminds me that I have to forgive myself for the type of parent I was in survival mode. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's a hard one. It's a hard one. And that's a part of their journey too, and that's one of the things that I've talked to my kids about is you guys didn't ask for this either. And this is a part of the journey that is yours to work through and to make peace with and to figure out, who do I want to be in this world?
Wow, I'm getting emotional, feeling the healing just speaking to you of that, similar to the way I felt on my retreat. And so I guess a great question would be, tell me about your retreats. You're really like well-known, like incredible. I know in the Grand Canyon, I've heard all about that. I mean, the stories, the testimonies, they have gone from the canyons of Arizona all the way to Jersey. I've heard great stories about them. Tell me, how did that come about? Like, tell me about the retreats. I want to go on one of these. Tell me.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, so I I started doing this work, Judd, when I was sitting with my therapist at the time. The first thing she said to me when she first met me was, "Oh God, she's a strong one. Like there's something's going to come from this. This isn't going to take her down." She didn't tell me that until much later. But then she talked to me about, why are you healing so much and so quickly? How are you becoming this person that you're becoming? How are you working through and navigating through all of these big problems that you have and challenges in your life? And what got me through it all was literally climbing mountains and navigating the ocean on my paddleboard with dolphins and whales. Like I was figuring out life through nature. And what I didn't realize was how that was going to become the foundation, literally, of everything that I do today, personally and professionally. So I started a business back in 2015. I went back and got my commercial use authorization and my wilderness first responder certification at 42. Who would have thought? A lot of people questioned me on that one. And I started leading retreats in the Grand Canyon because my own uncle, who was also an adventurer, took me down there years prior. And I had worked through a lot of my own figuring out my comfort zone, working through my own resistance with life. This is before everything happened, right? And I was finding these new versions of myself down there. And I'm like, damn, this place is pretty cool and powerful. Well, so when everything hit in 2013, I started using that space for my own healing as well. And I decided that that was going to be my place where I was going to take other people to do the same thing. So I have literally led CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies, executives of Fortune 500 companies, to teenagers trying to figure out, what college am I going to go to couples working on their marriage, across the board, hundreds and hundreds of people. And that space has been the space of really learning how to navigate through life's challenges, businesses, problems, like everything. I mean, it's been absolutely, I got to tell you, like the stories that I could tell of things that have happened down there is mind blowing, literally mind blowing what has happened down there. And that actually became the premise, that became the what I talk about today from stage. So I literally, when I'm on stage, I bring the Grand Canyon to the audience. And it has been, because it's not, I think, here's the deal. I think that we look at life really kind of ass backwards, if you may. That's my Midwest term. We look at life like we just got to be on the climb. We got to be on the climb, right? Like when we're young, we're even thinking about, when I'm 40, I'm going to be doing this. When I'm 50, I'm going to be doing this. When I'm 70, I'm going to be doing this, right? Like we are conditioned to live life on the climb.
Yeah.
And the way that I approach life and always have is, it's not about the climbing. It's about that going and descending first into who you are, descending and being prepared, learning how to problem solve, learning how to tackle life's obstacles and those challenges before us. And then when we do climb, we know that we're climbing against the right wall. We know that we're climbing in the direction that we are intended, regardless of who you are, regardless of what you're doing. Leaders, CEOs, executives, teams, all of it. And it's the coolest thing ever to see people get it, right? Like they get it. They understand it. And when they're down there and they understand it and they come out and they are climbing, they're like, oh my gosh, I have been doing this wrong my entire life. Right?
Right.
So
there's
I lead these retreats.
There's this it sounds like a strong mindfulness element to it. That
It's everything. It's just everything. It's mind, it's body, it's spirit, it's emotional. Right. It's literally clicking in, as I call it. It's all of it. Yeah. And it's more than anything, though, it's just freaking beautiful, because it's this reconnection with who you are so that they can lead the way that they were intended.
I find there no irony in the fact that the pool, the basketball court, and for you, the fucking Grand Canyon.
I know.
The Grand Canyon. That's your healing spot. You
Yeah.
can't. Um, the framework itself, make bold moves. Can you walk me through that for a moment?
Well, so the framework itself has really shifted quite a bit through the years, right? And so I don't want to, so honestly, I don't really want to walk it through it because it's so like, it's so,
So let me back that up. Let's go backwards on this.
let's go backwards.
Let's go backwards for a minute. You are now an incredible keynote speaker. I've had the privilege and honor, by the way, of hearing you.
Did you listen to me that night? That's so sweet.
Thank you. Well, I wasn't going to miss the opportunity. And so tell the listeners what is it that, what are the takeaways? What do you want your audience after a keynote, to feel? Because the Grand Canyon to me gave me this creative feeling like you bring the experience to me.
I do. Yeah.
What's the takeaway that I'm after a keynote that I'm walking away with?
I love this question. So when I'm doing keynoting and working with my clients, in fact, stay tuned because I can't really say right now, but I am leading a really cool team down into the Grand Canyon in June, which I'm super excited about.
I'll do a follow-up.
It's so cool. It's all about problem solving, right? And there isn't a problem in this world that we can't solve. And I think that I know from experience that every challenge, every problem, every obstacle that lies before us, it's either this space to learn from and grow from and to develop a better understanding of who we are.
Yeah.
Or it is something that literally engulfs us so that we don't even know who we are, what we can do, right? And so when I'm leading or speaking from stage, it's taking people to that depth and literally like quote depth, right? We descend in order to ascend. We go deep into what it is to problem solve. And we use, in terms of the framework, the canyon as a metaphor. And so when we think about the canyon, so this is why I'm like, I don't really want to have like the step 1, step 2, step 3 conversations because it's just like, I don't operate that way. I don't work that way. Yeah. It's more organic. When I'm talking about the metaphor of the canyon, I talk about the layers of rock, right? And I talk about the Colorado River that forges below, and it's cut through all of this. The 6 million years it took to create this, the 1.8 billion years of rock in this canyon, and how we as humans need to learn how to be patient within the work that we do, how to navigate from a place that allows us to walk through the adversity and allows us to also really dive into what is possible on the other space, right? Like what is possible in that other space? Because everything is in creation at all times, including the canyon, including our lives, right? And so in terms of like, what do I want the audience to leave, besides being motivated and inspired to get their butts outside and to also create the space that can, to find creativity and clarity in their space, it's really understanding that, our lives are very much like that canyon. Very much like that canyon. So when I'm guiding people through it with every step, they're developing this deeper sense of self, right? Yeah. And also walking through and working through their problems along the way. That canyon literally is the greatest metaphor for business and life. 100%. 1,000%. It is like the greatest metaphor because it's not about climbing. You got to descend in and be prepared before you come out the other side.
I love that. Sara, you are a podcast host of Live Boldly with Sara.
Yeah.
You've written a book, walk through this. You have led all of these incredible retreats. I'm going to go on one of these.
Oh, please do.
Beyond you being this incredible mom of 3 wonderful men, you're just doing so much for so many others. I love to ask this final question of all my guests, which is, how do you authentically connect best with yourself?
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to ask me, who holds space for you? Because that's what everybody asks me. If you're constantly giving, who holds space for you? Well, I always tell them, I'm like, nature does. Like that. And this is actually what this goes into it. So I will tell you that I have like nothing comes between me and my 10 days a year to go on a trail. Literally nothing. Like my kids know this. They understand the importance of this. And I literally calendar it in every single year. So I have done everything from my self-care, my personal development, my being able to dive into deeper of who I am. It's my time to disconnect, to reconnect with myself. I've done everything from the High Sierra Trail for 10 days, summiting Mount Whitney on top under the most incredible moon to watching the sunrise.
Hmm.
I've done the John Muir Trail for 22 days. And currently what I'm in the process of doing is section hiking the Sierra High Route, which is the most dangerous and difficult route in the United States. There is no trail. So you're literally in the High Sierra Mountains. You're on top of a peak. It's the coolest freaking thing in the entire world. And you're looking out at this other mountain and you're like, I got to get to that peak. And how do I get there? And, adventuring has allowed me to, and again, this is where your difficult times and challenges, right? Don't thank them. Thank you for navigating through them and
Hmm.
finding this version of you.
Hmm.
And so adventuring has been it for me. I love climbing mountains and I love paddling out on the ocean. If I don't have that time for me to reconnect, my kids literally look at me and they're like, Mom, you got to get outside. Like they can tell, right? They're like, you got to go climb a mountain. You got to go camp in the wild. You need more of that right now. And it's given me space to develop everything from my business to me to relationships to, all of it. Like I have no words for it.
Hmm.
It's been the most magical gift through all of this.
I remember when I was going to connect with you out in San Diego, and I emailed you, and I get this email response. It says like, "Hey, listen, I'm going off the grid. Off. I'll be deep in the canyon. If this is important, send it by SOS satellite. Otherwise, see you later." And I was like, I love her. I'm just so proud. I was like, yes, you're a rock star for doing that. I would have been trying to figure out like where's the cell service, like an ass, not giving me myself that time, and you did that. And thanks for being courageous and bold. And I'm gonna have to use that email myself.
I have had more people that have sent me messages back like, are you serious? This is your response? Like, yeah, I'm off grid. Peace out. In 2020, I would send my kids messages and I'd say, is COVID still happening? Because I'm somewhere up on Forester Pass, through my Garmin. And they're like, and they would send me messages back, please tell me you're joking. I'm like, no, I'm not joking. Like, what's happening out there? Just give me the 2-second like rundown, but I think that we need to model more of that. We need to model more in and this is what I always go back to, when I close my eyes and take my last breath, will I be proud of how I lived my life? Each and every day. And if my response isn't a hell yes, then I'm doing something wrong. And of course, I have hiccups. Of course, I still go through those dark nights. Of course, I still have, those days of like, why, how, all of it. Of course I do. I'm human. And I always come back to when I close my eyes and take my last breath, will I be regretting? Will I be proud of how I'm living this life? Or will I regret for not doing it a different way? So,
Sara, thank you so much for that life litmus test that I'm going to apply moving forward, and more
do it.
so for your strength, your shared experiences, your love and forgiveness
Thank
of
you.
men, and your compassion, and your most valuable resource, your time today. I thank you. I am deeply grateful, and I am just proud to be connected to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Sara.
Well, thank you for having me, Judd. You're amazing.
I want to extend my deepest gratitude to you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow us on your favorite platform or share this episode with a friend. You can also follow me on Instagram at Judd Shaw Official. A special thank you to personal injury law firm Judd Shaw Injury Law for their support in helping us bring this podcast to life. Remember, friends, authenticity isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about embracing our vulnerabilities, celebrating our strengths, and owning our stories. Until next time.